The palace of the alien queen was a place that humans had only heard about in stories. It was said that the walls were carved from living crystal, glowing with a strange inner light, and that the queen herself ruled with a voice that could command fleets across the galaxy. No one dared to speak to her in anything less than trembling respect. To many, she was not only a ruler but almost a force of nature, a being so far above others that she seemed untouchable. When the human expedition ship landed on her world, the air was thick with expectation. Diplomats, soldiers, and scientists stepped out, all of them aware that they stood before one of the most powerful leaders in known space. They bowed deeply when they were escorted into the great hall of the palace, their eyes rising only enough to catch a glimpse of her throne. The queen was unlike anything they had ever seen. She was tall and graceful, her form humanoid but adorned with shimmering scales that reflected the light of the palace walls. Her crown was not an ornament but a living part of her head, branching like crystal antlers. Her eyes glowed softly, not with cruelty but with a presence that made even the bravest feel small. The human ambassador stepped forward, his voice steady though his heart raced. "Your Majesty, we thank you for granting us audience. Humanity wishes only for peace and understanding with your great empire." The queen regarded him in silence for a long moment. Her gaze swept over the humans, studying them the way a scholar might study a rare specimen. She spoke at last, her voice calm and resonant. "Humans, you are small in number, fragile in body, yet I have heard whispers of your persistence. Some say you cannot be broken. That is why you are here, is it not? To prove your worth." The ambassador bowed again. "We do not seek to prove dominance, only to show friendship." The queen tilted her head slightly, her expression unreadable. She had heard such words from many species before, and most of them were empty. Alliances came and went, promises were broken, and strength was always tested. Yet there was something different about these beings. They stood not with arrogance, but with a kind of quiet dignity. She would test them in her own way. Among the delegation was a small child no more than 5 years old. The humans had not intended to bring the child to the throne room, but the queen's guards had allowed it after noticing the child clinging to her mother's robes. The child's wide eyes darted around the great hall, taking in the shimmering walls, the towering guards, and the alien queen herself. To the child it was all wondrous, not frightening. As the queen's eyes swept across the humans, they landed on the child. For the first time in years, she felt a flicker of something unexpected. The hall grew silent as the child stepped forward, slipping free of the ambassador's careful grip. Tiny footsteps echoed against the crystal floor. The guards shifted, ready to intervene, but the queen raised a hand, halting them. The child stopped at the base of the throne and looked up. For a long moment, the queen gazed down, expecting fear, trembling, or perhaps tears. Instead, the child smiled with pure innocence and spoke a single word in a small, clear voice. "Mother." The sound rippled through the hall like a shock wave. The ministers gasped, the guards stiffened, and the ambassador froze in horror. To call the queen such a name was unthinkable. In her empire, she was addressed only as Sovereign, High One, or Radiance. No one dared to call her anything personal. The word mother was not even common in her language, for in her society, children did not know their parents. The queen's eyes widened slightly, though her face remained calm. Inside, however, something stirred. She had been called many things in her life, titles of power, honor, and fear, but never that. Never mother. The hall remained silent, every pair of eyes fixed on the queen, waiting for her reaction. Would she strike the child down for insolence? Would she banish the humans for such a disrespectful act? But the queen did none of those things. Instead, she leaned forward, studying the child more closely. The small human did not flinch. Those bright, innocent eyes looked up at her with no fear, only warmth. "Why?" the queen asked softly, her voice carrying across the hall. "Do you call me this word?" The child tilted their head as if the answer were obvious. "Because you look like one." A ripple of confusion spread among the alien ministers. None of them understood. The humans shifted uneasily, the ambassador breaking into a nervous sweat. He opened his mouth to apologize, but the queen raised her hand again, silencing him. Her gaze remained on the child. "I do not understand," she said. "What is a mother to you?" The child blinked, then spoke with the simple honesty only a child could offer. "A mother is someone who cares for you, someone who makes you safe." The words were like a blade through the queen's composure. She had ruled for centuries with strength, with wisdom, with unyielding power. Safety to her people was provided by fear of her throne and the reach of her armies. Care was given only through duty, never through affection. She knew nothing of this strange human concept the child spoke of so casually. The queen's ministers whispered urgently among themselves. They warned of insult, of danger, of manipulation. But the queen silenced them with a glance. She looked once more at the child, who stood without trembling, waiting for her response. For the first time in her reign, the queen did not know what to say. The silence stretched, and in that silence the hall felt different. The weight of authority shifted just slightly, because a single fragile human had spoken one word that no one else dared. The queen finally leaned back on her throne. Her voice was steady but softer than before. "You are bold, little one. Bold or foolish, yet I find no malice in your eyes. Very well. You may call me what you wish." Gasps filled the hall again, but the queen ignored them. The child beamed, as if the greatest barrier in the galaxy had been broken simply by a word. They giggled and repeated it, this time louder, their voice echoing against the shining walls. "Mother." The queen closed her eyes briefly, feeling something stir inside her chest, something she had long forgotten. It was not power, not fear, not command. It was something far more fragile, yet strangely stronger. She did not yet understand it, but she knew that a single word had changed something within her. The humans left the hall that day filled with uncertainty. They did not know if they had offended the queen or touched something far deeper. But the child walked beside them happily, unaware of the storm they had set in motion. And in the solitude of her throne, the alien queen whispered the word softly to herself, as if testing how it felt upon her tongue. "Mother." It was the first time in centuries that her voice trembled. The days on the Accord Station were not as peaceful as they seemed. Even as humans and other species began to adjust to one another, shadows of danger crept closer. Whispers among delegates hinted at threats, but no one fully understood what was coming. Elias and Serenia, now spending nearly every waking moment together, began to sense the tension in the air. It started subtly. Ships from distant systems vanished without a trace. Traders reported entire colonies disappearing. The Accord convened emergency councils, and the word Shrikor began to echo through the halls. Elias had never heard the name before, but Serenia's reaction told him all he needed to know. Her expression tightened, her eyes flashing with something between anger and fear. "The Shrikor," she said quietly one evening as they trained together, "are not negotiators. They do not communicate. They consume. Entire planets vanish under their hunger. They are parasites and they are relentless." Elias frowned. "And they are coming here?" Serenia nodded. "They are aware of humanity, of Valorians. Everything. They see opportunity in weakness. And we are weak compared to their numbers, weak." The word rang in Elias's ears. Humans were fragile in the eyes of most species, but he refused to let that be true. He had fought monsters that outnumbered him, survived ambushes that should have ended him, and still stood. And now he had Serenia by his side, fierce and untamed. Perhaps together they were not weak at all. The first attack came silently. Sensors on the station detected anomalies, brief signals of ships that appeared and disappeared faster than any human or Valorian pilot could react to. Before anyone could act, a swarm of Shrikor drones struck the outer sectors, tearing through defenses with terrifying precision. Elias and Serenia were thrown into chaos. They moved together without a word, instinct and trust guiding them. Serenia's speed was unmatched. She leaped, struck, and vanished before her enemies could react. Elias complemented her with strategy, predicting the drones' movements and laying traps to slow their advance. Even as the drones fell, more arrived. The Shrikor were endless, their numbers overwhelming. Yet the bond between human and Valorian shone. Where Serenia would have gone alone, Elias anticipated her moves, covering blind spots and reinforcing attacks. Where Elias would have struggled to adapt alone, Serenia's instincts filled the gaps. In the chaos, Elias began to notice something unexpected. Other species, who had often looked down on humans, watched with wide eyes. They whispered among themselves, realizing that humanity was more than weak soldiers or untrained newcomers. The human beside the Valorian princess fought with courage and clarity. He did not panic, did not hesitate. He adapted. Hours passed like days, yet the two of them never faltered. They moved through corridors and open halls, protecting fleeing civilians, coordinating counterattacks, and striking down the Shrikor drones with precision. By the time the first wave was repelled, both were exhausted, their uniforms torn and their bodies bruised. Yet neither showed fear, and neither could deny the unspoken bond that had grown stronger. Serenia leaned against a wall, her chest heaving as she caught her breath. "You are stronger than I imagined," she said, her voice low, almost reluctant. "Not in body alone. But here," she added, tapping her chest. "You think clearly, act decisively. You are human but not weak." Elias allowed himself a small smile. "And you are terrifying. But I like that about you." For a moment, a shared laugh eased the tension, though both knew the battle was far from over. The Shrikor were not a single wave. They were a storm waiting to return. The next days were filled with preparation. The Accord scrambled forces, reinforcing ships, coordinating defenses, and trying to predict the Shrikor's next strike. Elias and Serenia worked together constantly, planning strategies, mapping weak points, and training allies. They argued, clashed, and disagreed, but in each moment of tension their respect grew. They were no longer simply mate and protector. They were a team, inseparable in purpose. One evening, as they studied a holographic map of the station and surrounding sectors, Serenia's sharp gaze fell on a particular cluster of signals. "They are testing us," she said. "They will not strike where we are strongest. They will probe our weaknesses first." Elias nodded, understanding instantly. "Then we must anticipate their probe and turn it against them." They worked through the night, planning a countermeasure. Serenia's feral instincts combined with Elias's tactical mind created a plan no single species could have devised. They would set traps, lure the Shrikor into controlled zones, and use both human ingenuity and Valorian power to turn numbers into disadvantage for the attackers. The attack came at dawn. The Shrikor ships descended like a dark cloud, their presence a silent threat over the station. Alerts blared, alarms echoed, and delegates scrambled. Yet Elias and Serenia were ready. Serenia leapt into action, her speed and strength unmatched. She tore through the drones with deadly precision, striking before the enemy could react. Elias moved beside her, placing charges, coordinating allies, and striking weak points. Their combined efforts created pockets of safety, where civilians could escape, even as the Shrikor attempted to overwhelm them. In the midst of battle, a larger drone broke through, a monstrous shape that dwarfed their defenses. It lunged at Serenia, but Elias intercepted, pushing her out of harm's way. Together they struck, synchronizing attacks in perfect rhythm. It was not just skill, but trust, each knowing the other's next move, each compensating for the other's weaknesses. When the wave finally subsided, the station lay battered, yet standing. The Shrikor retreated, not defeated, but deterred, at least for now. The Accord had witnessed something extraordinary. Humans were no longer seen as fragile newcomers. They had allies, yes, but one human had stood beside a Valorian princess, matching her ferocity and strategy step for step. The aftermath was quiet. Medical teams moved through the halls, attending to wounded soldiers and civilians. Elias and Serenia leaned against a wall, bruised and tired, their bodies aching but their spirits unbroken. "You do not tire," Serenia said, her voice a mixture of admiration and disbelief. "I've had worse days," Elias replied, "and I had you beside me." Her eyes softened, a rare moment of vulnerability passing over her features. "You fight not like a human," she said. "You fight like you belong here." Elias met her gaze. "Maybe I do." The bond between them deepened that night. They were no longer simply mates by ceremony, nor allies by duty. They were partners forged in fire, tested in battle, and strengthened by mutual respect. The Shrikor had revealed the truth. Humanity was underestimated, and together, human and Valorian could change what the galaxy believed about strength and courage. But even as they caught their breath, Elias knew this was only the beginning. The Shrikor were patient predators. They would return, larger, stronger, hungrier, and when they did, every skill, every bond, every ounce of courage would be tested again. For now, though, Elias allowed himself a small moment of satisfaction. They had survived. They had proven themselves. And most importantly, he had Serenia by his side, wild, untamed, and fierce, yet trusting him enough to fight together as equals. As the station lights dimmed and the echoes of battle faded into quiet, Elias looked out into space. The stars were distant and cold, yet they seemed less daunting with Serenia beside him. Together they had survived the first wave. Together they would face the next. And together, humanity's place among the stars was beginning to be written, not in words or ceremony, but in courage, strength, and unbreakable bonds. The days following the first wave of HFY attacks were tense. The station still hummed with activity, but beneath the routine there was unease. Everyone knew the HFY would not rest, and the threat of another assault hung over the Accord like a shadow. Elias and Serenia worked tirelessly, training recruits, planning defenses, and studying every scrap of information they could find about the invaders. Even with the station's advanced technology and the combined strength of its species, it was clear that survival would not come easily. The HFY were cunning, adaptable, and nearly impossible to predict. They did not simply attack. They probed, learned, and struck at weaknesses, and the Accord had more weaknesses than it realized. Elias had never seen Serenia so serious. Her wildness was still there, her restless energy, but it had sharpened into focus. She moved through corridors with purpose, her eyes alert, her senses ready to detect even the smallest sign of danger. Yet Elias noticed something deeper now, a weight on her shoulders. Even a princess as fierce as Serenia could not hide the burden she carried, the expectations of her people, the pressure of the Accord, and the knowledge that failure could cost countless lives. One evening, as they reviewed tactical reports, Elias noticed Serenia staring at the screen without really seeing it. Her hands were curled into fists and her jaw was tight. "What's wrong?" he asked gently. She did not answer at first. Then in a voice low and serious, she said, "I have not told anyone. Not the council, not my people. There is a secret in my blood, a truth most of my kind do not reveal." Elias leaned forward. "A secret?" She met his eyes, and for the first time there was vulnerability there. "Valorians require life energy to survive," she said. "Not food in the human sense. We draw energy from others, and it can be dangerous. Most species would see this as a curse, and humans would see it as horror." Elias did not flinch. He studied her, noting the honesty in her eyes, the raw truth she shared without hiding it. "And you think this will make them turn against you?" he asked. "They might," she admitted. "They might see me as a threat, or worse, as something unnatural. And if I fail to control it, then I am dangerous not just to enemies but to everyone." Elias reached out, placing a hand over hers. "Then let me help," he said simply. "I don't care about the energy, the curse, or anything else. I stand with you." For a moment, Serenia's sharp features softened. She let out a quiet breath, a sound more human than she usually allowed. "You are different," she whispered. "Most would run. Most would fear you. You choose to trust me." And so they trained side by side in ways no one else could. Elias learned to anticipate her needs, to help her control her abilities when she drew too much energy, and to recognize when she was close to exhaustion. Serenia learned to temper her instincts, to focus her energy without losing the edge that made her deadly. Together they became not just partners, but a single force complementing each other in every way. The next HFY attack came without warning. This time the swarm was larger, faster, and more coordinated. They struck at the outer sectors, attempting to bypass the station's main defenses and reach the civilian areas. Alarms blared, lights flashed red, and chaos erupted. Elias and Serenia moved instantly. They fought as one, their coordination flawless. She struck first, her speed and strength unmatched, cutting through the drones with precision. Elias followed, using tactics, traps, and strategy to control the battlefield. Together they cleared paths for civilians to escape and protected those unable to defend themselves. But amidst the chaos, a massive HFY warship broke through the defenses. It descended into the station like a dark cloud, its presence overwhelming. Serenia moved to intercept, her eyes glowing brighter than ever, her movements a blur of deadly precision. Elias stayed close, placing charges and organizing counterattacks. Then a stray strike hit Serenia. She cried out in pain, her body thrown back against a wall. Elias rushed to her side, panic rising in his chest for the first time since their partnership began. He could see the energy draining from her control weakening under the strain. Without hesitation, he offered his own blood. It was a simple act, almost instinctive, but it carried a weight of trust and sacrifice that no words could express. Serenia hesitated, shock evident in her glowing eyes. You would?" she whispered. Without question, Elias said. We fight together. We survive together. You are not alone. The moment the transfer began, Serenya's strength returned. Her wounds healed faster. Her movements regained their speed and precision. With renewed power, she struck down the attacking drones, turning the tide of battle. Elias stayed by her side, coordinating defenses and ensuring that no other civilians were harmed. The Sci-Fi Corps retreated once more, leaving behind wreckage, but no further casualties. The station was damaged, but its people survived. And in that victory, the bond between Elias and Serenya was stronger than ever. After the battle, they stood together on the observation deck, overlooking the damaged sectors and the distant stars. Serenya's expression was unreadable, but Elias could sense gratitude, respect, and something deeper. You saved me, she said quietly. And you saved more than that, he replied. You taught me how to fight alongside you, how to see the bigger picture and how to trust. Not just you, but myself. She looked at him then, her wild eyes softening. I never thought I would find someone like you, she admitted. Someone who does not fear me, who does not see me as a monster. You are rare, Elias smiled. And you are not a monster. You're a warrior, a princess, and the most dangerous person I've ever met. But I like that about you. For a long time, they simply stood there side by side, letting the silence carry their unspoken bond. They had faced death together, protected countless lives, and shared trust in ways no one else could understand. And in that trust, something new had grown. A connection that went beyond ceremony, beyond duty, beyond even fear. The other species began to notice. Whispers spread throughout the station about the human who had bled for a Valorian, about the unbreakable bond that could not be ignored. Humans were no longer seen as weak newcomers. They were survivors, partners, and allies. But even as the recognition grew, so did the tension. The Sci-Fi Corps would return. Their threat was not over, and the station remained a target. Every day brought new training, new preparations, and new tests of courage. Yet Elias and Serenya faced each challenge together, their trust unshakable, their bond unbreakable. One night, as the stars shimmered beyond the observation windows, Serenya placed a hand on Elias's shoulder. No matter what comes next, she said, we survive. Together. Elias nodded, meeting her gaze. Together, he agreed. And in that simple promise, they both understood the truth. The galaxy was vast and dangerous, but with trust, courage, and the bond they shared, they could face anything. The hidden war had revealed not just the strength of the Sci-Fi Corps, but the strength of humanity, the power of partnership, and the extraordinary potential of a human standing beside a wild alien vampire princess. The stars outside seemed brighter that night, as if acknowledging the courage and trust that had grown within the station walls. The galaxy would never see humans the same way again, and Elias and Serenya were only beginning to show what that could mean. The aftermath of the second attack left the station battered but unbroken. Repairs were underway and emergency crews worked tirelessly, but the tension in the air remained. The Sci-Fi Corps were patient predators. Their retreat did not mean defeat. Everyone knew they would return, stronger and more coordinated. Elias and Serenya stood on the observation deck, overlooking the station's damaged outer sectors. The stars beyond were countless, distant, and cold, but together they had survived the first true test of humanity among the stars. They had fought, bled, and triumphed, and the bond forged between them was stronger than any chain. We have to prepare, Elias said, his tone steady, despite the exhaustion in his body. They'll be back, and next time they won't hesitate. We need every advantage we can get. Serenya nodded, her eyes glowing faintly. We do, but we are stronger than before. You've learned to move like a predator, and I've learned to see beyond instinct. Together, we are more than either of us alone. The next days were filled with planning, training, and coordination. They worked with other species to strengthen defenses, devise new tactics, and anticipate the Sci-Fi Corps' moves. For the first time, humans were not underestimated. Soldiers, diplomats, and strategists began to see that humanity had a place among the galaxy's strongest and smartest beings. But it was not just strategy that mattered. Elias and Serenya knew that trust was their greatest weapon. The bond they had built in battle could not be replicated by technology or diplomacy. They moved together seamlessly, anticipating each other's moves, compensating for weaknesses and maximizing strengths. Where one hesitated, the other acted. Where one faltered, the other lifted, then the attack came. The Shry Corps returned in overwhelming numbers, a massive fleet of warships descending on the station like a dark storm. Alarms blared across the corridors and emergency lights bathed the halls in red. Citizens ran for cover. Soldiers rushed to positions and chaos threatened to consume everything. Elias and Serenia moved instantly. They did not speak, for words were unnecessary. Each knew the other's instinct, and their actions flowed like a single force. Serenia struck with feral precision, cutting through the drones and smaller ships with lightning speed. Elias coordinated human and alien forces, predicting enemy movements and directing counterattacks. The battle raged for hours. The Shry Corps were relentless, but they underestimated the human beside the Valorian princess. Together, Elias and Serenia created openings, exploited weaknesses, and protected civilians and allies alike. Their bond became a symbol of strength, a living proof that trust and cooperation could surpass sheer numbers. At a critical moment, a massive Shry Corps warship broke through the station's outer defenses. Its energy weapons firing indiscriminately, Serenia leapt forward faster than the human eye could track, her strikes precise and deadly. Elias stayed close, planting charges and coordinating attacks, ensuring her path remained clear. They fought as one, a perfect balance of instinct and strategy, ferocity and calculation. When the battle reached its climax, the Shry Corps fleet began to retreat. They had failed to break the station, failed to capture or destroy key areas, and failed to overwhelm the alliance of species united by courage and trust. The victory was hard-won, and the cost was high, but the result was undeniable. Humanity had proven itself. The council convened after the battle to discuss the outcome. Representatives from dozens of species spoke, their voices filled with awe and cautious respect. They acknowledged what had been seen. A human had fought alongside a Valorian princess, surviving and thriving in a battle that had shaken even the most seasoned warriors. Elias and Serenia stood together as delegates approached them. Praise was offered, respect was given, and congratulations were extended. But more than that, there was a shift in perception. Humans were no longer a species to be patronized or underestimated. They were capable, resourceful, and courageous. They were partners among equals in the galaxy. For Elias, the recognition was satisfying, but the greater reward was personal. Serenia's wildness remained, but now it was tempered with respect and trust. She had come to rely on him as much as he relied on her, and together they had accomplished what no single species could have done alone. One evening, after the council adjourned, they stood once more on the observation deck. The station was quiet, the damage slowly being repaired, and the stars shone like distant promises. "You have changed everything," Serenia said softly, her voice carrying a mixture of pride and awe. "Humans will no longer be seen as weak, and the galaxy may never look at me the same way again either." Elias looked at her, tired but determined. "We did it together, and there's more to come. The Shry Corps will not give up, and neither will we." Her hand found his, a small but powerful gesture of trust and unity. "Together," she whispered. The bond they shared was more than ceremony or duty. It was forged in fire and blood, tempered in trust and courage. And it was this bond that would define humanity's place among the stars. In the weeks that followed, other humans began to step forward. Inspired by Elias and Serenia, they trained harder, fought smarter, and embraced alliances with alien species. The perception of Earth changed. Humans were no longer new or naive. They were survivors, warriors, and allies, capable of standing shoulder to shoulder with the galaxy's fiercest beings. Elias watched as humans and aliens worked together, sharing knowledge, strategies, and even cultural understanding. The galaxy, once vast and distant, began to feel smaller, connected by courage, trust, and the willingness to face danger together. And through it all, Serenia remained at his side. Wild, fierce, untamed, yet fiercely loyal. She was not tamed, nor did she ever need to be. But she had chosen him, trusted him, and together they had reshaped the course of history. One night, as they looked out over the stars, Elias spoke quietly. "We've done something important here. Not just survived, not just fought, but proven that humans belong." Serenia nodded, her eyes reflecting the starlight. "Yes, and we've done it together. You are not just a human soldier, Elias Ward. You are my partner, my equal, and a symbol of what we can achieve." For the first time in weeks, Elias allowed himself to relax. The galaxy was still dangerous, still unpredictable, but they had faced the darkness together and emerged stronger. Humanity had taken its first steps among the stars, and Elias knew that this was only the beginning. As the station settled into quiet and the stars stretched endlessly before them, Elias and Serenia stood hand in hand. They had survived war, forged trust, and proven themselves to an entire galaxy. And in that moment, the truth was clear. Humanity had a place among the stars, and with allies like Serenia, no threat would ever seem insurmountable again. The galaxy was watching, and it had learned a powerful lesson. Underestimated humans, once thought weak and naive, were capable of courage, strategy, and bonds stronger than any species could have predicted. And the wild alien vampire princess had chosen a human, not as prey or pawn, but as a partner, forever changing how the stars would remember humanity. Together, Elias and Serenia faced the future, ready for whatever the galaxy would bring, and for the first time, humanity was not just surviving among the stars, it was thriving. The first days after the ceremony were difficult for Elias. He had been through wars, he had been stranded on battlefields, and he had faced fear with his heart steady. But nothing had prepared him for Serenia. The Valorian princess did not behave like the other chosen mates. Where other partners shared polite greetings and tried to learn each other's ways, Serenia broke every rule. She entered rooms without invitation, inspected weapons that did not belong to her, and laughed when humans tried to explain their traditions. She was untamed, restless, and carried herself with the arrogance of a predator that feared no one. For Elias, it was like living beside a storm. He tried to be patient, but Serenia's every word was sharp, her every action a test. She would appear suddenly, standing too close, her glowing eyes studying him as though searching for weakness. Sometimes she circled him like a hunter watching prey, and sometimes she vanished for hours, leaving him to wonder what trouble she was stirring in the shadows of the station. But Elias did not flinch. He had learned long ago that fear gave power away, so he met her with steady eyes, answered her sharp remarks with calm words, and refused to bend when she pushed. This seemed to amuse her, and though she never admitted it, she began to linger more often at his side. One evening, when the station lights dimmed to mimic night, Serenia found him in the training hall. Elias had been working through combat drills, his body moving with the rhythm of discipline. Sweat glistened on his brow and the sound of his breath echoed in the large chamber. Serenia watched from the shadows for some time before stepping forward, her footsteps soft but her presence impossible to ignore. "You fight ghosts," she said, her voice smooth as silk. Elias turned, lowering his stance. "I fight to stay sharp. A soldier can't afford to forget." Serenia tilted her head, studying the lines of his muscles, the way his stance remained ready, even at rest. "You fight like prey," she said at last. "Always guarding, always waiting for the strike." He raised an eyebrow. "And how do you fight?" With a grin that showed the faint glint of her fangs, she moved faster than his eyes could follow. In a blink, she was in front of him, her hand at his chest, her strength undeniable. Elias did not retreat. Instead, he held his ground, his eyes steady on hers. "Like this," she whispered, then stepped back. Quick, decisive. A predator does not wait. Elias breathed out slowly. A predator also doesn't plan. A soldier does. That's why predators lose to soldiers. Her laughter rang through the hall, sharp but not cruel. She seemed to enjoy his defiance, perhaps even more than she enjoyed the idea of intimidating him. "You are strange, human," she said. "Most flinch when they see my teeth." "You only argue." He wiped his brow and set his training blade aside. "You chose me. Did you expect me to be afraid of you?" Her eyes glowed faintly in the dim light. "I hoped you would not be. Fear bores me." From that night, their strange bond began to grow. Serenia tested him daily. Sometimes she hid in the shadows, striking without warning to see if his reflexes were sharp. Other times she pressed him with questions about human history, mocking his people's wars and mistakes, then watching closely to see how he defended them. Elias never raised his voice. He spoke simply with the quiet strength of a man who knew who he was, and that, more than any boast, seemed to impress her. The station soon buzzed with rumors. Delegates whispered about the human who walked beside the Valorian princess without chains, who did not shrink when she bared her teeth. Some laughed at the idea, others watched with unease, and a few began to wonder if there was more to humans than they had believed. One day, Elias was summoned to a council gathering. Serenia came with him, of course, for she refused to let others speak to him without her presence. The chamber was filled with voices as species debated Earth's future place in the accord. Some argued that humans were too reckless to be trusted. Others argued they were too weak to matter. As Elias sat listening, Serenia leaned close, her voice low and amused. "They speak of you like you are a child," she said. "Does it sting?" "No," Elias answered. "I've heard worse," she smirked. "Then why do you stay silent?" "Because I'd rather let them underestimate me," he said. "People make mistakes when they think you're weak." Her expression softened for just a moment, her wildness quieted by curiosity. She looked at him not as prey, not as a soldier, but as something she could not yet define. Then the fire returned to her eyes and she leaned back with a grin. When the meeting ended, a group of delegates approached Serenia. They bowed to her, but their eyes flicked to Elias with disdain. "Princess," one said, "surely you jest with this choice. A human is not worthy of your bond." Serenia's lips curled into a dangerous smile. She stepped closer to Elias, placing her hand on his shoulder, her sharp nails grazing the fabric of his uniform. "Worthy?" she repeated. "I saw more strength in him than in 10 of your kind. Do you dare question my judgment?" The delegates faltered, muttering apologies before retreating. Elias gave her a look, half amused, half weary. "You enjoy making enemies," he said. "They are not enemies," she replied. "They are gnats, and you are mine. Let them choke on their fear." Despite her words, Elias could not ignore the growing tension. Serenia's choice had shaken the accord. Her people, the Valorians, were already feared. Now, with a human at her side, the balance of power felt uncertain. Many watched them with suspicion, waiting for the bond to break, but it did not break. Day by day, Elias and Serenia learned to move in rhythm with each other. She taught him the instincts of a predator, how to read movement and strike without hesitation. He taught her patience, strategy, and the value of planning beyond the next heartbeat. They clashed often, their arguments sharp. But beneath it grew respect and something deeper neither dared name. One night, as they walked along the outer ring of the station, Serenia stopped to gaze out at the stars. The light of distant suns reflected in her eyes, making them glow brighter. Elias stood beside her, silent for a long moment before speaking. "Why me?" he asked at last. "Out of everyone in that hall, why did you choose me?" She did not answer immediately. Instead, she studied the endless darkness of space. Finally, she said, "Because you did not bow. You did not tremble. You looked at me as though I was flesh and blood, not a monster, not a goddess. No one has ever done that," Elias nodded slowly. "And if I had bowed? Then I would have broken you in half," she said with a smirk. For the first time, Elias laughed. Serenia joined him, her wild voice carrying into the night. In that laughter, something unspoken passed between them. Not love, not yet, but a bond strong enough to make the stars seem less distant. The wild princess had chosen him, and though the galaxy did not understand, Elias was beginning to see the truth. She was not looking for a servant nor for prey. She was looking for someone who could stand beside her without fear. And somehow, against all odds, he was that person. Their story was only beginning, but already it was changing the way others saw humanity. For if a human could walk with a Valorian princess, perhaps humans were not so small after all.